Welcome back. I'm Brianna Keeler in for Jake Tapper. Planned Parenthood called the attack on its clinic in Colorado Springs an act of domestic terror. The Attorney General called it a crime against women, and the president used it to again call for gun control. Joining me now to talk about the political fallout of this shooting, we have Sean Spicer. He's the chief strategist of the Republican National Committee. We have CNN political commentators Donna Brazil, S.E. Cupp, and Bakari Sellers. So I want to start now talking about the shooting at Planned Parenthood in Colorado Springs. This is what Hillary Clinton tweeted about it. Today and every day, we stand with Planned Parenthood. This is her recent tweet about it. And I do wonder, though, S.E., when you look at the debate, I mean, even just this morning talking to Republicans, I've certainly noticed a change in the tone. Do you think that this changes the tenor of the debate over abortion right now?
Well, I think it's a terrible idea to blame debate for what is a horrific act of violence. If you're going to do that, then you have to say that leftist rhetoric was to blame when Floyd Corkins went into the Family Research Center and shot up that office. That's just a wasteful exercise. And to hear your former guest, John Hickenlooper, the governor of Colorado, suggest that we need to somehow change our tone or police our rhetoric because of the act of what I am assuming is going to be a madman, is a distraction and a waste. This is a serious argument.
Planned Parenthood said that there's been an alarming increase in hateful rhetoric and smear campaigns against abortion providers and patients over the last few months. What they're saying is that this is creating a toxic, poisonous environment. Women have the right to have an abortion and the full range of reproductive health services.
Is that, in your view, part of the reason why this happened? Planned Parenthood is certainly drawing that conclusion.
First of all, no, I have all of their statements. They didn't draw that conclusion. There was one little sentence, one little snippet. We don't really know the motivation of this madman, this murderer. But we do know that there is an atmosphere out there, not just in Colorado Springs, but across the country, where women want to have the opportunity to go to these clinics, or men too, because Planned Parenthood is open to everyone, and there's no reason to create it.
Do you think that impugning the opinions of people who disagree is helpful?
I'm not impugning the opinions of anyone, including Donald Trump, who might say.
We also have to acknowledge that the rhetoric in this country has gotten out of hand. And I think that's what people are talking about. Whether or not we're in debates talking about Operation Wetback or anything else, the way that we communicate with people on both the right and left has gotten just completely out of hand. Now, I also don't want to just let this guy off and just say he was deranged and a loner. I mean, I want to actually have a conversation about guns in this country. I want to have a conversation about mass shootings. And when we just discount him as somebody who's a loner, somebody who's just going to do this anyway, it takes away from these discussions that we need to have.
About mental health, I would assume.
I agree.
As well.
I think this is a mental health issue. One big takeaway that I think gets lost in the discussion this week is that we've had a lot of discussion about law enforcement over the last month, and correctly so in terms of the use of force. What we saw this week was Officer Garrett Swayze running to an incident, and it's a reminder that gets lost in this discussion of what law enforcement does every single day.
It really is tremendous, and certainly not to take away from that at all, Sean. But you say it's an issue of mental health, and yet the mental health bill, the overhaul bill, is languishing in a House committee, a Republican House committee. If it's such a priority, then why is nothing being done?
Well, I think it should, and I think you've heard a lot of the folks, and maybe this shooting is the impetus for that moving forward. But the fact of the matter is that one thing all of us, I think, can agree on is that this guy is nuts. He was crazy. He's mentally unstable. While we don't know anything about the particulars of this incident, there's no way that anybody sane could commit such a heinous act. And that's the number one thing that we have to concentrate on, is what stops one. Because Governor Hickenlooper himself talked about all of the lengths that Colorado has gone to universal background checks and this. So adding another layer to stop a crazy person is actually crazy itself.
I do want to talk about guns. The president, this is where he went. It's almost become a bit of a reflex, it seems, when you have a shooting. He said, this is not normal. We have to do something about the easy accessibility of weapons of war on our streets. Enough is enough. But does anything change?
Well, that's why I can't let Sean get away with just casting this as being mental health and casting it aside, because of the simple fact that if we were going to do something in this country about guns, we would have done it after a madman went into Sandy Hook and killed 20 kids and 6 adults. But we didn't. And we keep having these discussions, whether or not it's Charleston or whether or not it's Oregon or whether or not now it's in Colorado. And it seems as if we're having trouble getting our friends on the right to actually want to do something substantive about guns in our community.
But I got to add one other. There are a lot of people with mental disabilities, and we stigmatize people with mental disabilities and mental health issues, and many of them are not violent. And so we need to make a...
And our language is powerful.
We have to be very careful about doing that as well. Last night, I went on the website. There were 5 people murdered in this country, 14 injured due to gun violence. We have to figure out how to strengthen the background system. Got to make sure we do everything right. Because we have an issue in this country, and we have to talk about it.
Governor Hickenlooper detailed all of the lengths that they've gone to in Colorado to do this.
But it's a fact. It's a fact. Dylan Roof would not have gotten the weapon that he went into a church and murdered 9 people, but for a loophole in our gun laws.
No, it wasn't a loophole. It was a failure.
No,
the fact of the matter
is that despite the fact that we haven't had major federal gun law legislation in the wake of some of these shootings, we have had local and state gun legislation in places like Colorado and New York that have in many cases have had to be repealed and drawn back because they have been found to be unenforceable, unproductive, inefficient. I mean, there is a sensible conversation to be had, but when you're a Democratic candidate calling the NRA and law-abiding gun owners enemies, you can't have a conversation that's actually productive.
We have a lot more to